You are listening to Healing with Haley, episode 48, Quantum Healing, Connor's approach to holistic psychotherapy and self-regulation. Welcome to Healing with Haley. I'm your coach, Haley Kirk. On this podcast, we dive into ways to heal, embrace, and truly love our lives. Here's my belief. So much of our suffering comes from what we believe. I'm here to help you understand your mind and question those thoughts to start your healing journey. Ready to get started? Let's go. Welcome, you guys. I have an amazing guest today, Connor Wills. Welcome.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey girl, hey.
You guys, I met Connor a few weeks ago and we had so many interesting conversations about ayahuasca and healing, and I was just like, I have to have him on my podcast. This person is so amazing. And then I asked him for his bio. Y'all, he is just decored. Like, he's got all these decorative experiences. He's worked with gang affiliated clients, he's worked with people with schizophrenia, spectrum disorders, like, and over 15 years of experience working with teens, adults, all of the above. Like, where do we even begin? I think I want to know about this one, this gang affiliated clients and patients. So tell us, first off, I really want to start with this one. So you co-founded Quantum Psychotherapy Group. Tell us where the origin story, take us all the way back. What is this all about?
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I like your vibe and I'm really glad and grateful we get to do this. This is gonna be fun.
Yes.
Uh, Quantum. Well, my wife and I, she's my co-founder, co-owner, right? So we have been very active in our field, always having two and three jobs, it seemed, wearing many hats for the last, at that time, it was about a decade, a little more. Uh, and we were navigating different settings. I'm working in schools and higher levels of care with people and primarily teens that have a lot of mental health and behavioral issues. My wife working more in the rehab substance specific end of things. And long story short, it's COVID time and things are weird and we're not really stoked about where we're working. And we had an opportunity where it was like, okay, we can make a move right now. And do we take our life savings? We don't own our home or anything. It was like all or nothing. And we have a lot of belief in spirituality and our purpose on this planet and this life and the universe and such. And we both felt like this is our mission. Like we're going for it. And we went all in on a gamble. And our plan was maybe we'll hire one other person. It'll be three of us was our plan. And 2 years later, we're that I'm aware of, the largest and fastest growing holistic practice in New Jersey. We have a team of 10 of us, and we're doing tremendous work. My team is incredible. Like, I don't want to be like the figurehead. Like, we have an incredible team
Yeah.
working with everything from trauma, addiction, kids, teens, adults, you name it. We're just really trying to do some impactful work here in New Jersey.
Oh, that's so inspiring. So it was during COVID and you guys were like, there's a need here that we don't see is being fulfilled.
Yeah, like, long, I'll give you the breakdown. I mean, we were working for someone else. We joined the same practice, and with a month's notice, this individual said, "Hey, listen, I'm cutting your pay 40%. Take it or leave it." And
Oh,
after a string of inappropriate things, including publishing some of my work under her name, and it's a whole story I don't need to get into,
oh
but
man.
it was just
Yeah.
not a good vibe. And
No.
we were like, well, do we go off somewhere else and join a place together? Do we do
Yeah.
separate things, or do we start our own? It was three options, and we felt let's start our own. And the next logical question is, well, what is our mission? What is our purpose? What is our image? And we said, well, authenticity is number one. So who are we as authentic people and beings? And we just started from there. That was our vision. And the universe has provided the rest. I don't really know how we've gotten to this point.
That's so cool. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I've interviewed quite a few business owners these past few months, and I feel like that's the common thread is it's almost like you hit kind of like a, not to say rock bottom, but something kind of shocking, right? Like a 40% cut or, something like a COVID. And it's like, wait, is this what I want? It's kind of this aha moment of,
Yeah.
is this where I want to keep, do I want to keep doing this or can I do my own thing? And and it be like a passion, and passion with work and having the right people, I feel is like the other piece to the puzzle of doing a business.
Of course. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's where people get it wrong. And any of us who've ever worked for organizations, small, large, or somewhere in between, it's like when you don't value the people that are working with you, or if things aren't authentic and clear, it just translates to the organization. One of your listeners can fact check me, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate. The Chinese Mandarin character for the word chaos is exactly the same as the word opportunity. So
Whoa. Oh, that's so cool.
right? So
Yeah.
whenever I see this in my clients, people I know personally, when there's a chaos happening or life throws us a curveball, where is the opportunity? Where's the open door?
Ooh.
Where is the, you know?
Oh, I'm obsessed with that. Yes, that is so cool. I'm gonna look that up, that little symbol. I
Yeah,
want to
get a
know what it looks
tattoo or
like.
something.
That's so cool. So, okay, so then with your 15 years of experience, so I want to know about this gang bang, 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 bang thing. This is nuts. Like,
I don't know if it's that, but okay.
yeah, gang affiliated patients. So, what, just dive into that part.
Sure. So when I first started my career, Um, I kind of intended on working with teens. So I started working in various settings. We call them higher levels of care.
Hmm.
So like your rehabs, your outpatient clinics, your residential programs, things like this, hospitals. So I started working in these different fields and I'm navigating my way of where do I feel most comfortable. And at the time I was living in Richmond, Virginia. And I started working at a psychiatric hospital on an acute unit. And my unit was the type where you had to be a danger to yourself or others to be on that unit. It looked very much like a prison. Most psychiatric hospitals today, they don't look like, the old movies where, people are like behind locked door. It's usually not that intense.
Uh-huh.
However, my unit was because you have to have that kind of a container in a hospital for when people get out of control or unsafe. So I'm working
Mm.
there. So we get a lot of people off the streets. We get a lot of people coming out of prison, people with co-occurring, as we say, like mental health and addiction, all these things. So I started working with gang members, both from the street and from prison. And then as I delved more into my teen work, I was working in the projects in Richmond, Virginia. Um, and I also was getting gang clients. And then fast forward a few years, I'm back in New Jersey, and I worked at the largest residential program in the state, a place called Daytop. And a large percentage of our population were gang affiliated, and they're by far my favorite people to work with, no question.
Wow. Why? That just blows my mind.
I mean, I've always been interested in sociology. I think it's just fascinating, just the structure of it all, and to understand everything from the colors, the handshakes, the history. There's so much there, but more importantly, uh, like I've had many situations like this, right? Well, I have say it's there's two brothers, and maybe they're living, in an impoverished neighborhood, and one of the brothers is kind of depressed and shut down and sad, and he plays video games all day. The other brother, with the same trauma history or the same poverty, the same lack of support at home, or whatever the story is, he says, "No, I'm gonna get what I need. I'm gonna survive." They go to the streets. I'm gonna find love. I'm gonna find respect. I'm gonna find protection. I'm gonna find money. I'm gonna find acceptance, and they take what they need. Now, I'm not condoning the way they go about that, but when you take that person and through therapeutic work, I think of it like kung fu, which is more of a reactive martial art than like an aggressive one. You come at me, and how do I redirect your energy? When you redirect the energy of
Hmm.
that kind of a personality, those gang
Hmm.
kids,
Hmm.
many of these gang leaders, by the way, are like teens and early 20s. They're not older, a lot of them. They're young.
That's
When
wild.
you redirect that energy, they are unstoppable. This is the makeup of CEOs and leaders. I mean, the resilience. It's incredibly powerful when you can redirect that energy. It's very rewarding. So I think that's the core reason why I love working with those kind of folks.
That's so cool. So, what I I just want to know more about this. So, when when someone is in a gang, like what kind of how are you working with them when because I feel like it's deep psychology, right? Because it's this from what I've learned from documentaries, so I could be totally wrong, but it's very like they offer this kind of paternal love, this kind of like masculine love, because a lot of these kids are coming from motherhood, like single moms. And I feel like gangs have that masculine kind of piece that they're looking for. Or tell me more about that.
It's funny. My field is definitely female dominated. So I'm 36 now, right? So I've always kind of been like a quote younger male, I guess is how I've been seen in my work. In some ways, there is that piece where, that masculine energy, we could call it, can be helpful. But, I answer phones with Quantum all day, and I have moms calling me all day about their teens. And I would say it's kind of 50-50 where the mom might say, hey, my kid needs a strong male. Maybe dad's not in the picture, or they need discipline, whatever the story is, right? Uh, but it's like 50% of the time, I think it's the opposite, where they need a soft, nurturing kind of energy. Like I might have like the quote cool factor, like, oh, you can relate, or this guy seems cool. I get that a lot. But like I think by and large, I'm generalizing, most male teens are going to be more comfortable breaking down crying or talking about sexual trauma with a female as opposed to a male. Similarly, some of my best work, in my opinion, has been with young women, maybe who are lacking a father figure. Not that I'm trying to be a father figure, that's certainly not our
Yeah.
dynamic in therapy, but being able to hold that space in that way, that grounding. When the mom might say, oh, they're a female, they need a female, it's 50-50.
Okay, that's so interesting. Wow. So when you're working with people that have been in gangs, is it because they've done something criminal and then they're also needing psychotherapy?
So it depends. Day to day, right now, I'm not seeing many Yang kids because I'm doing a
Uh,
different thing, right?
right.
We're like doing the insurance thing and all that kind of stuff. So when I was working more in the higher levels of care consistently,
Uh-huh.
I was doing this more in the day to day. To your question about what gets them in their day top, you had to have a primary substance use disorder diagnosis. I mean, that's easy to fudge, right? But a lot of
Hmm.
the kids were something like this. Uh, I have a gun charge and I got caught selling some heroin and I'm on probation. And at the time, weed was still legal in Jersey. So I got caught smoking weed twice on probation. And now I'm going to get violated and either go away for 2 years or I'm going to go to day top program for up to 13 months and I have to complete there. So our kids were up to 13 months with us. They live in the program, they have jobs. Uh, yeah, it was the whole thing.
Wow. So what it, I wonder what are your thoughts on their likelihood to repeat those offenses after the program?
It's a great question. It's very high. I had one amazing supervisor who actually just passed away last week, but
Oh,
she used to
I'm
say,
sorry.
yeah, it was rough. She's amazing, amazing person. Uh, we just give these kids a soft place to land. And on the one hand, you can look at that and say, all right, so they're there for say 6 months and they go back to the same environment. Like I had one kid in particular, gun charges. He ended up getting two attempted murder charges after he left us, gang lifestyle like through and through from Patterson, New Jersey. And his dad was the gang leader. His dad was selling heroin. I mean, this is where he learned it. So if is the goal to say never do the thing again, I don't know how realistic that is, but to show them another way, to show them you have value beyond those behaviors, to show them a different kind of love and support and help them feel heard and seen. I think there's a tremendous therapeutic benefit to that. I've always made I've made my best effort to when I know that a kid I've worked with is locked up because you see the news and these kids get locked up. I try to write them, you know, and I remember I wrote a kid around, it was actually around COVID again. And he replied back. He sent me a letter and gang kid from Passaic, New Jersey. And he basically said something like, I haven't forgotten the things you told me. Like those seeds were planted. And I don't know where he is
Wow.
today. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't condone the choices he's made, but showing an individual who has an immense amount of trauma, as most of these kids do, uh, love and acceptance and respect for who they are, not for what they do, I think it is immensely, immensely healing.
Wow. Yeah, that whole world really scares me, honestly. I think like I'm very terrified of gangs. I think it's just scary, you know? And I I wonder if you could kind of talk to us about trauma. Like if someone has heard this word a million times, but they're like, what is that? What is it? Like, what is it? What does it mean? How does someone like deal with trauma? What would you say?
Sure, happy to do that. Uh, Trauma is Greek for wound, wound.
Mm,
And I think that's really important to start out foundationally because, a lot of people say, well, what's the point of talking about my trauma? I'm past it and it happened. You can't change the past. Yes, you can't change the past, but you can heal a wound. Trauma is not the punch, it's the concussion. Trauma is not the knife, it is the
mm,
stab wound, right? You go to a trauma surgeon or you trauma unit.
yeah,
And a lot of people, a lot of us are walking around with these gaping open wounds. We don't even realize how it's affecting us.
yeah.
Trauma is also more physiological than psychological. I'll say that again. Trauma is more physiological than psychological. That's what the latest research is showing us. What trauma actually is it is the way the autonomic nervous system, which is in the body, connects all the vital organs and then goes to the brain. It's the way that the autonomic nervous system responds to stress and anxiety. So the thing that happened to me with my uncle when I was 5 is showing up in this moment when I'm 17 trying to take the math test. I don't necessarily consciously recognize the relationship, but when I go into a fear response, a fight, flight, freeze, my amygdala, my brain pops off and my body fills with adrenaline and cortisol, and all these things happen biologically. It's because I'm going into that same stress response, that survival mechanism, because of the things I have been through. So trauma is the wound to the nervous system. That is my perspective, and I think what most of the latest research is suggesting.
Autonomic. Say that word again.
Onomatopoeia. Autonomic nervous system. It's
Autonomic nerve. What is that?
sure. So you have a central nervous system, and
Uh-huh.
within that you have what's called the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic means automatic. I don't know why they didn't just call it the automatic nervous system, but it is essentially all the automatic functions of the body. Like you don't have to listen. You don't have to tell your liver to process enzymes. You don't have to tell your heart to beat. We'd all be
Mm.
dead.
Or your lungs to breathe.
Correct. Now, I'm going to give you a pop quiz, Miss Haley.
I'm
In the
scared.
whole autonomic nervous system, all the organs are connected, right? The main nerve is called the vagus nerve, VAGUS.
Okay.
There's one organ that is both autonomic or automatic, and we have full control over.
Oh,
Which
the
one is it?
lungs.
Exactly. And that
Yay.
is the only reason why we say take 10 deep breaths or meditate or breath work. If you could control your kidneys by thinking about it, we'd be saying that just as much. Hey, have you meditated today? Or have you like checked in with your kidneys consciously? It wouldn't matter. That's the only reason why, because what it does is send a signal to the brain. 80% of the information in the body and the autonomic nervous system actually goes body up. We used to think it was the brain down. It's opposite. So when you breathe in a regulated way, it sends a signal to the brain, hey, false alarm, we're good. Because if the threat was here, if the tiger's here, we're not going to be breathing normally. So it helps the mind calm down.
Wow. Oh man, that's so wild. Wow. The body up. That's
Yes.
amazing. Do you use breathing techniques to help your clients with processing trauma?
1000%.
Really? How would you like walk me through that? What does that look like?
Sure. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of like CBT, cognitive
Oh,
behavioral
cognitive behavioral
therapy?
therapy? Yeah.
So that's a classic modality that many of us use. That's kind of your traditional talk therapy and looking at your beliefs. And a lot of folks nowadays in the holistic or spiritual world, I would say they knock CBT. CBT, talk therapy, it's bullshit. Done it. Da, 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 da. Can I curse, by the way?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Uh, so people knock it, but that's because they don't understand it. CBT is actually one of the most heavily researched and evidence-based modalities we have. CBT is really, really good. However, if you're someone with trauma and you've done therapy 3 and 4 times, say it doesn't work for me. Well, scientifically, it makes perfect sense. If my nervous system is so dysregulated, or even when I feel quote normal, I'm like idling at 70%, right? The way my body is. My frontal lobe, my prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that involves like emotional processing and decision making, all these things, you don't have access to that, right?
Mm.
When your amygdala is popping off in the brain, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, these kind of things your listeners probably have heard of, you don't have access to the solution focus, the safety focus part. So, how can you do a higher order of cognitive therapy when your body is like freaking out? So, that's all to
Yeah.
say we have to target the body first. So, if someone comes to me with, say, trauma, and 70% of people in America by the time they're 18 have one of the top 10 most traumatic things happen to them, by the way. So, the majority of human beings, whether you think so or not, you got some major trauma, which is crazy. But the first thing I'm probably doing after we just get to know each other is talking about psychoeducation. So let me teach you the things we're talking about right now. Let's give you some context. Then I'm giving you daily practices the same way that you might get from a personal trainer. We're doing this 7 or 10 minute routine a few days a week in the morning. And that starts to change what's called the tone of that vagus nerve, that major nerve in the system, where you actually, it's lasting, it's measurable that allows you to handle more stress and anxiety. So it's not just coping, but it's getting to the root holistically. And once we do that enough, then we can do the higher order cognitive therapy because you're not so reactive going from 0 to 60 with anger or anxiety or fear or whatever it may be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So my question is always like, how do you know when you've healed a trauma to start that CBT part?
That's a great question. Let me think about that for a second. You're asking me as a clinician, or are you saying how does a client, a person know?
Both.
Well, I think it's highly subjective. I look for a lot of body cues, shaky voice, tapping, foot. A lot of body language tells me how regulated someone is. I look for
Mm.
measurable behavioral change. So when I'm working with a teen who's got behavioral issues, which is kind of my bread and butter, and like I can think of a girl I'm working with right now, like today, she had an issue at school. Somebody called her a slur. And instead of like reacting the way she would normally, freaking out, fighting, she went to the office and filed a report. So that
Mm.
tells me in that moment that kid was able to feel more safe and secure in her body and use her frontal lobe to make decisions, responding instead of reacting automatically. So those are all little cues for me that we're able to start doing this higher work. Uh, Also, when there's not so much crisis, if someone's coming to therapy every week, like this just happened and this just happened, this that tells me that we're very dysregulated. We're in this fear survival stuff a lot. But when it's like, I love when a kid's like, yeah, nothing new happened this week. I'm like, good. We get to deeper stuff, you know? So that these are all little mile markers for me that we're shifting in the right direction. And of course, client feedback is paramount.
Wow. So, okay. So, as I told you before the podcast started, I had sometimes in my parenting, I notice I'll like it, and I'll be totally chill. And then my son will like throw a toy or throw a toy at me. And then boof, I like explode. And it comes out of, it's like 0 to like what you were saying. And I was like, oh, is that a trauma response? So tell me about that.
Well, the way I approach therapy is you're the expert of you. I just have
Mm,
questions, right? I have more
yeah.
questions than answers. So I guess if we want to dive into that, my question for you, I would start out by saying,
Yeah,
what
this would
is
be
what
so helpful because I have so many moms listening.
let's do it. Meaning is very powerful. If we're doing a video, I would draw a diagram that I use with clients to really break down meaning. But what does that mean to you, Haley? In that moment when your child throws the toy, what is the story you tell yourself? What does that symbolize? What does that mean to you?
He's disrespecting me.
Okay, keep going.
He's he's disobeying me, he's disrespecting me, he's defying me. Uh, he needs to respect me. He
Mm,
needs to listen to me.
Okay. So he's if your child, who's how old?
Two.
Two, if your
Mhm.
2-year-old is defying you and disrespecting you, what does that mean to you to get one level deeper? What do you tell yourself about that? Therefore, blank.
I'm a bad parent.
Boom. So
Yeah.
how much of your emotion that moment is about the little toy, and how much is it about that? Am I a bad parent?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Did we
that
nail it?
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because a part of me likes to accept both realities. Like both could be true.
Sure.
I could be a really good parent, and I usually am. And then I can also be a really bad one. And I think we all have those moments of like light and dark, strong and weak in us. So how do you balance that?
Live in the gray. Black and white,
Mm.
dualistic thinking, good, bad, right, wrong, left, right, Republican, Democrat. We can go all day talking about the different ways that we separate ourselves. And again, a big part of my personal life is spirituality, and I believe everything is connected. That's why we call it quantum. If you know anything about quantum physics, that will make sense to your listeners. But uh, I see things as a spectrum. Color is a spectrum. Sound is a spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. Sexuality is a spectrum. So the invitation to you or your listeners would be mindful of using dualistic language, good, bad, right, wrong. What if it's more of a gray? There are times when I show up as the mom I aim to be, and there are times that I don't show up as much as that on that
Mm.
continuum, on that spectrum, and I'm working on that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Whew, it's like a breath.
Take the
'Cause
pressure off.
yeah. Yeah, and that's so true because there's kind of this like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like that kind of if I believe that, right? If I believe I'm a good parent and a bad parent, then it's kind of like I'm splitting myself in two almost.
Correct. And the shadowy subconscious part of that, if we want to keep it within the family context, if I can be a good or bad parent, then what else does that mean about my kid?
They can be good or bad.
Right.
Wow.
And that's felt and received.
From me to them.
Hell yeah.
Wow. Oh, yeah. You know, I was reading, listening, really. When I read, I mean listen to, on audiobooks. But it's the Body Keeps Score. Have you heard of that
Yeah,
book?
Bessel van der Kolk, of course.
Yeah.
Seminal
Oh,
work.
he just like blasts off the author. Yeah, I'm learning so much. And when the body says no by Gabor Mate,
Yeah, he's
it's
great.
like it's so wild how much the body it's so intelligent. Like it's this intelligence on its own.
Yes.
It's wild and sometimes it's hard, especially in parenting, to like I feel like parenting is reparenting yourself and like
Yes.
learning how to manage you and
Yes.
then you'll be fine with your kid. Your
Yes.
kid will be fine.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, sometimes I notice a lot of times I have to like, okay, what do you need, Haley? Like, are you tired? Are you hungry? Do you need a shower? Like what do you
Hmm.
need? And a
Hmm.
lot of it is physical. It's physical because I don't get a lot of sleep, like, and that's a me thing. My son's thankfully sleep trained, so he sleeps, but I don't. So it's just like, yeah, like I really need a nap. Okay. All right, let's go take a nap. So like
I love that
learning how to
questioning.
like
Yeah.
parent me. Man, that's wild. So for how would you, let's say in that moment, I'm like, he's throwing his toy and I react and I do something and I'm like, I yell or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I acknowledge, I'm like, oh, like that was not what I wanted to do. And he probably felt some kind of trauma from that.
Well, I'll say this.
Okay.
The word trauma, it's beautiful that we're using it more. When I started my career, you didn't hear about it a lot. Now I think it's maybe gone a little too far on the spectrum of that.
Mm.
So is yelling at your kid about the toy traumatic? I mean, nothing is inherently traumatic.
Whoa,
Okay.
explain, explain.
people who grow up in the like gang communities, they might see a shooting and like they're so desensitized to it, it really doesn't affect them, to that degree. So nothing is inherently traumatic. We're all in the same car crash. We all have different responses. Some of us are completely traumatized, can't drive for 6 months. Someone needs a week and they're fine. Somebody's good to drive the next day. Nothing's inherently traumatic. Trauma is just when the event, whether it's a one-time momentary acute thing or it's constant, like an abuse that happens for years. It's when the event or a series of events overloads the system more than it can handle.
Mm.
Right. So like for any of your parents listening, like if you have a real bad blow up with your kid and they're like, are they traumatized? Probably not. I mean, could be, but like probably not. It's not that sensitive. We're very resilient. The brain is and the body are the most complex things known to the known universe, you know? Like,
Wow.
yeah. But you were saying I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. Nothing's inherently traumatic because it depends on the individual.
Yes. The best advice I've ever gotten in my career. Okay, because again, the populations I've worked with, like I've almost lost my life working with gangs. Probably a time. It was one time was pretty sketchy. I've had kids who have killed others, been killed in jail, overdose. I've lost people. That's the population I choose to work with, um, and that's hard. And some of the best advice I ever got from a supervisor was, "You're not that powerful. Humble yourself." So you have a client. They go home Friday night. They overdose. They die. Wasn't your fault. You didn't cause that. You're not that powerful. Humble yourself. You have another client who
Wow.
emails you 4 years later and says, "You won't believe this. I'm in graduate school to become a therapist because you inspired me." Connor, humble yourself. You're not that powerful. Either way, on the ends of that spectrum, humbling. So I say
Mm.
that to say that I fundamentally, as a holistic psychotherapist, I personally fundamentally believe that no one can make us feel anything.
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000%.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Something you did could have overloaded my system. We say in trauma therapy, we're not responsible for what happens to us necessarily, but we're
Right.
responsible for how we recover from it. So if I'm
Yeah.
5 years old and an adult does something to me, like, yeah, that's more than likely 99% of the people are going to be traumatized by that. And that's totally fucked up and that's not okay.
Right.
And I have a responsibility to myself to work through that and overcome that. So people I think who haven't necessarily worked through their trauma are very quick to use that kind of language. You traumatize me, you traumatize me. And in some ways, as I'm thinking as we're talking, it could be that if I'm already idling at that 70-80% of my nervous system and something happens that really upsets me, it could put me in a place where I feel like completely overwhelmed. I feel
Mm.
unsafe. It triggers a memory of a person, place, or thing that really did traumatize me. So
Yeah.
in my belief, my perception could really be that. But to walk
Mm.
around saying that, this person won an election, so I'm traumatized, or this person did,
Right.
I question that.
It's like yeah, I think that's a victim mindset, right? It's very much so like this external locus of control, right? Like everything that happens around me is is gonna affect me. And one of my favorite quotes that I heard recently is don't wish for things to be easier, wish to be stronger.
Yes.
And I was
JFK
like,
said that. Yeah.
oh, is that who it said?
Hmm.
Oh, I'm like, whoa. Every time I
Uh-huh.
start throwing myself a pity party, I'm like, let's be stronger, Haley. Let's be stronger.
Yeah.
Let's be stronger. Don't wish for things to be easier.
Right.
I think it's just I I like how I show up when I really believe that.
Yes. And we can only, I don't think I'm generalizing. Things we identify with, consciously, subconsciously, or somewhere in between. That's the stuff that gets us. So I'm gonna go out on a limb, Haley, and say that you don't have a lot of experience playing, I don't know, bobsledding. You're not a professional bobsledder. Is that fair to say?
On the bobsled team. No,
Yes.
I'm not on the bobsled team.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I didn't know you're Jamaican. That's awesome.
Have you
Um,
seen that movie Cool
yeah.
Runnings?
Yeah, of course. Of
Yo,
course.
that's the movie.
Shout out
That's the
John
movie.
Candy. Um, but if I said, Haley, you know what? I gotta be honest. I think you're really cool, but I the way you bobsled, it's like atrocious. Like it makes me like think of you differently. Like you're laughing because it's so absurd. You're like a
Yeah.
bobsledding. But if I said, Haley, you know what? The way you parent, like I don't know, that hits a different place, right?
Yeah.
Because
I'm
you
more
identify
insecure
with it.
about it
Because you identify with it,
with being a
right?
parent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if somebody makes a comment about the way I look, my hair, my weight, my color, my whatever it may be, my personality, and I feel something. It's
Hmm.
an opportunity for me to sit with that and say, what is this bringing up within me? It doesn't mean the other person's right for what they did, quote unquote, right? It doesn't mean that it's okay, but I can't control the people. I can
No.
control my own reaction to
Yeah.
things. And if something triggers me, there's an opportunity with me to work through that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes, Connor. Yes. I have a story and I probably told this on the podcast, but I'm gonna tell it again.
Do
So
it.
I used to do customer service and this guy was being so mean. He was being so mean. And I like to set like I'm a boundary. I hold boundaries real good, usually. And so I was, just laying the boundaries, setting the boundaries. And then he was like, you know what? You need to just go do something better with your life. And then he hung up the phone. And that struck me because
Yeah.
I identified with that.
Yes.
He had what he said was something I have said to myself that I
Exactly.
need to be doing something. Yes, I agree with you. You're right. And that brought up something inside of me that was like,
Exactly.
yeah, it was a really great, he was my teacher in that moment. Like he taught me and
Yes.
reminded me, yeah, I agree with
Chaos and
you.
opportunity, right? There's an opportunity in that moment.
Yes, yes, his comment incited something I was already struggling with
Yeah.
on my person, like in my life.
Right. Right. So it doesn't make it okay what he did or quote unquote
No.
right. You
Yeah.
have to appreciate it, but to notice. In Buddhism, they have beautiful, beautiful little stories and little metaphors that say so much in such a simple way. And they talk about rocks in a river. Have you ever heard this?
No. Is that like the Dharma Sutra?
I'm not sure where specifically it comes from, but it's this story.
Oh,
This like not even a story. It's an idea that if every river in the world had no rocks in them, they would be smooth like glass going to the ocean. Everything would flow, right? But because of rocks and boulders, we have things like rapids and we have the foam and the spray and this kind of chaotic looking stuff, right? Well, the
yeah.
Buddhists would say that the idea is to remove as many rocks in our rivers in this life as possible. So if something triggers me, ooh, you're a bad therapist. Oh, I identify with that. It's an opportunity for me to work with that and try to remove that rock. So the next time I hear that comment, it doesn't have quite the hold on me. Then that's
Oh,
leading to liberation.
yes. Yes, you know what I found to be such a great tool is anytime someone says something to me and it incites some kind of emotion, like a strong negative emotion, maybe, I like to take a step back and see, like, how could they be right about this?
Yes.
And it's helped me so much. And then people get thrown off when you're like, oh, yeah, I could see that. Someone's like,
Hmm.
Haley, this one girl, this one girl one time, she's like, hey, are you pregnant? And I was like, oh, no, but yeah, I'm like pretty bloated. I could see that. So it's just like, I mean, she hadn't said anything to me that I hadn't told myself. I have told
Right.
myself I look pregnant before
Right.
because I'm like so bloated, right?
Right.
And it's like, it's that little like, ouch,
Yes.
a little bit, but it's, it's so cool when we can just say, yeah, you're right. Like sometimes I do lie, or sometimes I'm late, or sometimes I look bloated and pregnant. Yeah, you're right. So it's
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
it kind of fizzles out the chaos. Well, you keep using that word. It fizzles out the drama that comes on in our brain.
Right. And these are the just as micro moments can lead to emotional patterns or behavior patterns that we don't necessarily appreciate as we grow. The opposite is true as well, right? Neuroplasticity, the brain is plastic, yada yada.
Oh, I
So
love that idea. Tell
so
so
if
really quick, tell people what neuroplasticity is.
it's the ability for the brain to learn and unlearn things, essentially. Okay. So uh, if every time someone says something to me that I find offensive, again, it's not saying that it's cool for them to do that, right? We're not co-signing here. But if I cannot react, if I can take that breath from my nervous system, then I'm retraining my brain and body to have more capacity. And what you're describing, I love because someone I've worked with ayahuasca says uh, humility is the path to eternity. And humility to me is something that
Mm.
it's a practice for me. It's a yoga. It's a constant thing that I'm trying to stay anchored to, and to have that moment of, you know, where could there be truth in this, or I'm having a reaction, so where do I believe this? So can I be grateful for this moment and know that it's leading to my consciousness, my healing, my development, whatever you want to call it. Humility is so important.
Ugh, I love that so much. And because sometimes this is what I want to ask you. I really want to know what your thoughts are on this. I find people like you and me who are very aware and know, ways we can kind of like get out of like an auto body response, kind of
Mhm.
that fight or flight that you were
Yeah,
talking about. Sometimes I find myself there's like kind of the quiet observer. Have you ever heard of Michael Singer or
I
Eckhart
love Michael
Tolle?
Singer. I love
Yeah, I
Michael
love
Singer.
these guys. So remember how they always say like there's like the incessant roommate or like the voice in our head, but then there's like the quiet observer. And I see my quiet observer a lot
Yeah.
in these moments, but my body's just reacting, right? Like I yell or I take something out of my son's hands or I just react. And the moment I do it, my quiet observer is like, ooh, we do not like this. Like, this isn't how I want to show up as a mom.
Yeah.
And, and it's so hard to stop the body. Like, I find myself like, kind of like, oh, that movie in Spider-Man where it's that like black muck on his spider suit and he's trying really hard to get rid of
Hmm.
it. That's how I feel sometimes. Like it's like that quiet observer of me is like, nope, nope, we don't like this. We do not like how we're parenting right now. But it's like I'm so activated, right? I'm just
Yes.
like I could just like gnash my teeth. I could punch a wall. Like I'm so triggered.
Yes.
I
Yes.
know it wasn't my son, but like there was something about that. And I know we talked about the belief.
The meaning. Yeah.
Yeah, the meaning we're putting to it. But like how do we snap out quicker? Like I want to snap out of that black muck.
The daily practices. We have to expand our ability to manage stress and anxiety. Anger is not a real emotion. Stay with me. It is a real emotion, right?
Yeah.
Relax, people. But it's what we call like a secondary emotion. It's not the
Okay.
first thing that hits. Typically, from my perspective, the first things that hit are going to be either a combination of anxiety or fear, right? Guilt or shame, sadness or hurt. So it's these three categories.
Wow.
So anger shows up, especially in our culture as males, right? Like a man gets angry and pounds a table, that's quote unquote normal. But to be like, wow, in this moment I feel so much shame by what you just said. Like, how many times in your life have you heard a male speak like that? Or anyone for that matter. It's not where we go to. We get angry. So I guess what I'm getting to is like in the moment, give yourself some grace. Do daily practices to expand your capacity. Be proactive, not reactive. And the only thing I think more powerful than the moment of chaos is the moment of repair. And that is so healing and corrective for both parent and child. Of, hey, you know what? Mommy messed up there. How do you feel about that? How can I make this right? That humility again, when you micro moment that through a lifetime, that goes leaps and bounds when your child's a teen and young adult.
I love that. I love that so much. Two
Yeah.
parts. Okay, because yeah, I had, and I know he's little and probably doesn't understand what sorry means, but I do it anyways.
Yes.
I say like, "Baby, I'm so sorry. Mommy's sorry. I'm so sorry." And then Gabor Mate was saying that play is also like a reparation moment, and so
Sure.
I try to really like after that play with him, but to limit those incidences, you're saying to set a
Yep.
daily practice of emotion management?
Something for the autonomic nervous system. So
Okay.
whether it's daily meditation. Most of my clients, I recommend 7 minutes of basic Zen meditation. Follow your breath, stay on your breath. John Kabat-Zinn type stuff, if you're familiar with him and his work. Um, breath work, any sort of breath work for the autonomic nervous system. But people love Wim Hof. Great. Cold exposure. So whether I'm doing the whole ice bath thing and I got a blow up thing off Amazon to lay in full of ice, or it's simply the last 30 seconds of my shower, I crank that thing as cold as I can handle and I breathe through it and I allow it. I don't just white knuckle it like, oh my God, this sucks. How much longer? I make it a practice of acceptance and breathing, right? Yoga is
Cool.
great, exercise, all these kinds of things. Find your regimen, find the thing that helps you and mix it up. Today I feel like
Hmm.
going to the gym. Tomorrow I'm going to meditate. Then I'm going to yoga. But these things will expand one's capacity.
Okay. So wait, tell me the cold shower one. So it's 30 seconds at the end of your shower?
Yeah, for my some people are like down to get the ice bath thing. That's amazing. Some people are
Yeah.
down to do a whole cold shower. But even the last like 15 to 30 seconds, I tell my clients, start there. All this stuff, the
Hmm.
more the better, right? There's not a
Yeah.
quote right, wrong, just the more the better. So that
Yeah.
last 30 seconds, crank that thing as cold as you can stand
Uh-huh.
and breathe through it. That right, that feeling when you jump into
Yeah.
cold. And again, not just like how much longer this sucks. Can I relax my body? Can I accept? Can I breathe? It's a metaphor as much as it is the body science, right?
Yeah. Ugh.
Being
Well,
comfortable with the uncomfortable.
I actually just interviewed Lola. You know Lola
Oh, from
from the
Baltimore?
tribe. Yeah,
Shout
Baltimore
out
tribe.
Lola. Shout out
Yes.
Tribe. Yeah.
Yeah, and she did a fire and ice with me and some girls, and it was so she said something that I will never forget. She said, because we were doing the fire and ice, which is like 15 minutes in the sauna and then like 5 minutes in the ice bath.
Yeah.
And she was like, no one, like, remember this fire you're feeling in the sauna? And she's like, no one can take that fire from you. That's within you. And I was like, oh, I was like, oh, this is so powerful. And so, like, when I was in the ice bath, I was thinking about, like, I was like thinking about being a dragon and all this, like, fire in my body. And I felt like warm. It was so wild.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
what? So, yeah, those. Okay, so cool. So, okay, so gym. So I go to the gym, but I still find it's not helping me emotionally.
It's good for like stress management, moving energy
Okay.
through the body, but like the breath-based stuff is better. It's really
Yeah, I
like
agree.
getting disciplined in a breath work or meditation practice with the cold. I mean, if you could devote 10 to 15 minutes for yourself in the morning, I'm not talking about you specifically, but people, right? Like
Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes where it's like I'm gonna meditate for 7 to 10 minutes and I'm gonna do like some cold stuff in the shower. If you did that 4 days a week, 5 days a week, you will see massive
I
shift in
want
your
to.
capacity
Yeah.
because it's not about not feeling the thing or having the moment happen. We can't control the external. It's not
Yeah.
an if but a when. When the thing shows up, my kid throws the toy, my partner does XYZ. Can I
Right?
expand my capacity to keep that frontal lobe online where I can be in solution focus, creation, emotional regulation instead of reacting with my body into fear, survival, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn?
Wow. Okay. Again, on this example, because I know so many people can relate. So, is the idea of doing breath work that when my son throws that toy, that I breathe when it happens? So I'm like, okay, tapping into the body. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So to me, there's two ways of doing this stuff, right? There's the preemptive and then there's the coping. So how do I expand my capacity? We just talked about that. And then not when, but if the thing happens, no, I'm sorry, not if, but when the thing happens, I should say,
Yeah.
how do I show up? And
Yeah.
if we're doing a daily or a semi-daily meditative yoga or breathwork practice, one, we're conditioning ourselves to go to that breath, to notice the
Yeah.
thought. But two, it's actually changing what's called the tone of the vagus nerve in the autonomic nervous system. And instead of that nervous system being like a 10-lane superhighway where I go from 0 to 60, it's like a
Yes.
1-lane highway with traffic. And even a split second or two. How many of my gang kids have gone to prison because of a split second or two of decision? That's
Right.
meaningful.
It is.
That's meaningful.
It's such a good skill in every person's life. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, speaking of ayahuasca. I want to I want to take a few minutes and talk about because you said that you were kind of wanting to dive into those modalities. Like you've already done them, but maybe exploring them with clients or tell me more about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I'll say is that I approach plant medicine from a place of spirituality as well as psychology and science. So I'm looking at all of it. And I have way more questions than answers. I approach this very humbly. I'm no shaman, I'm no expert. I don't think anyone on the planet understands some of these experiences, especially ayahuasca and related DMT and 5-MeO DMT experiences. So I want to really just like take a moment to like honor these plants, these medicines and the lineages they come from because I'm just a simple, I don't know, messenger. I don't even I'm very humble in this stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Uh, what do you want me to speak on specifically?
Yeah, like what is ayahuasca? What's been your experience with it? Um, and how are you kind of thinking about using it in the future for yourself and
Sure.
like with clients?
Sure. So another thing I'll say is just like an informed consent almost like I never recommend psychedelics to anyone, be it a
Yeah.
client or in my personal life. One, because there are risks involved, and I think we don't talk about the risks enough.
Mm,
Uh, and two, because I just think it's a very spiritual, personal thing, and anybody who takes psychedelics or plant medicines lightly, like that shit will humble you really quickly,
mm,
really
mm,
quickly. Uh, Now, we have very prominently on our website that we work with plant medicine in the sense of integration and preparation. So, someone who's considering using plant medicine, we like to wave the flag of you can talk to us. Some of us on the team have in the past or currently work with these medicines. Some of us do not. Uh, but for people who are going into the experience, still want to have a safe space to talk about it with someone who's kind of walked that road at least a little bit,
mhm,
or someone who's had the experiences and like wants to make sense of them and integrate. So whether it be for an ayahuasca or even something like ketamine, which we're using in psychotherapy now, like we have affiliation with a group where to use the ketamine with them, you have to have 4 sessions with Connor before and 4 after, uh, just as a protocol. Okay.
mhm.
So I guess the first thing I'm always curious about with somebody who's curious about psychedelics is like, what's your intention? What have you heard? What's your hope?
Yeah, not me, but for someone who's interested.
Yeah. I think in my experience personally and just what I know and what I've heard and seen, I again like a spectrum. I think for most people, in most situations, when you're sitting with ceremonial plant medicines, like an ayahuasca, which is for those who don't know, it's basically a leaf of vine. You boil them from the Amazon, and now you can orally absorb DMT, which normally you cannot do that through the stomach. Uh, Typically, I think the first thing that it hits is like the subconscious. So the stuff that I'm repressing, i.e., trauma, it takes you there. So the thing you don't want to think about, it's going to take you there. So an opportunity, like we've talked about this evening,
Mhm.
uh, to work through that. I don't think psychedelics and plant medicines cure or fix anything. I think in the same way psychotherapy illuminates different angles, potential paths to healing, you still have to do the work. I know people who said ayahuasca over 100 times and they're still sitting and they're not getting much better. How do you integrate that experience? What did you learn about yourself, about the world around you, people in your life? What does it tell you to do or not do? That's the magic of it, the potential magic of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. I remember I read Jada Pinkett Smith's book, just like a few chapters of it, and she mentioned how much she had just done so many healing modalities, like equestrian, acupuncture therapy, everything. Like it was really surprising. I was very impressed with how much she had tried to do to
Yeah,
heal, and she said that ayahuasca was so healing for her. Like it made the difference for her.
can be. It can
Yeah.
also bring out psychosis and people come out worse or have committed suicide after. It's not
Wow.
common.
Yeah.
I mean, even Advil people can die from, right? But this idea that plant medicine, everyone should just do it, it's safe and it's healing and it's the silver bullet. Think again, y'all.
Mm.
Some people's experiences are blissful, beautiful. I've been in ceremonies where somebody is laughing the whole time. They're having the best night of their life. I've been in ceremonies where somebody's having the most hellish experience of their night and everything in between. It's the
Wow.
entire spectrum of experience. But most folks, I think, would say that when approached with intention and with integration support,
Yeah.
personally and professionally, they get what they need over what they want from ceremony. It might
Mm.
not be why you're there. Why am I having this experience? Why is it showing me this? Or why is it, but that's maybe what you really need. So yeah, I think for most people it hits the subconscious. It hits the things we don't want to look at, the things that are keeping us stuck. And then if for those of us who continue to work with plant medicine in a respectful, balanced, integrated way, it goes from healing to awareness, knowledge, purpose in this life. It can show you potential avenues for your future. It can show you things about, call it God, call it the universe, call it source consciousness. What are we doing here? Some might call it a spiritual awakening when you recognize that like we're not just our bodies and we might not have just one life. You know, yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. I think I think I'm really passionate about all the modalities of healing. I find it so fascinating. You know, some people heal from like crystals, some people heal from prayer. Like it's in fasting. Like there's so many ways to heal. And I love your approach. I think it's so unique and it's so beautiful and I love what you do. I think it's amazing.
Thank you. The more work is the people I supervise, I tell you, the more work we do on ourselves, the better we are for our clients. We can't take a client farther than we've gone ourselves. It doesn't mean we have to have the same experiences or the same traumas as them, but if I'm not doing the work, I know therapists who talk about meditation, have Buddhas in their offices, and I know they don't meditate. And that's not a judgment. You don't have to meditate, but like
Yeah.
don't front like you do and don't tell your clients to do these things if you're not, right? That's you're out of integrity there.
Yeah.
You're out of authenticity there. So it's
Oh, I
important.
love that. That's so vital for all like coaches and healers. What has been one of the hardest things you've had to heal from, and how did you do it?
In my own life,
Yeah.
man, what a question. I think this constant journey and process of self-love, and I don't think it's just like a finish line. I think it's a maintenance too. Once you get the peak, uh, PEEK, you peak at it. Once you get to peak at it, you still have to maintain it. And life happens and things, breakup happens or traumas happen in adulthood, right? So uh, being able uh, to navigate that, that's difficult. For me personally, plant medicine has been incredibly, incredibly helpful. Uh, I've always, for many years, just approached, I think, with a reverence and a respect and a humility and an understanding where even at, a music festival where a bunch of people are at the tent, drinking beers on LSD, I'm sitting on the mountain under a tree and I'm looking at the stars and I'm reflecting on my life. And I just, for some reason, it intuitively has just, I've always seen them as a tool to be respected. Not that I haven't had my fun, of course,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
uh, yeah, I get to answer your question, just this constant journey of self-love and maintaining that. And uh, that's probably true for most of us, I would assume.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. Connor, this was amazing. I can't wait to listen to the replay. Oh, this is juicy,
We're
juicy
done already.
stuff.
We should do this again. That was chill.
Yes, please.
We barely
Part.
touched
Oh,
anything.
what?
We barely touched anything.
I know. I feel like I got like a little ice cube of the iceberg. So tell us, where can people find you? What's the best way to reach you if they're interested in getting um, service from you? Tell us all the goods.
For sure. So Connor Wills, CONNORWILLS, quantumpsychotherapygroup.com. Quantumpsychotherapygroup.com is our website. On Instagram, we're Quantum Therapy NJ. I'll be honest, like my wife and I are so busy with all this stuff and all the things we do that like Instagram is really the best way to find out what we got going on. We do a lot of like
Oh,
women's retreats and workshops and events and different things. So
fun.
we're very active in like the New Jersey, New York area. Um, we do virtual stuff as well, but we post most of it on Instagram. Otherwise, you can hit our website, email us, call us. All the info's on there.
Cool. Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes so people can reach you guys. Oh my
Totally.
God. This was such a treat. Thank you, Connor.
Appreciate you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Healing with Haley. If you enjoyed this episode, I think you'll love my new 6-week coaching program. It's designed to help women embrace and love their bodies just as they are. Together, we'll explore your thoughts, meet them with compassion, and start releasing the ones that hold you back. Ready to start your journey to self-love? Join me and let's make this change together. Click the link in the podcast description below.